Kyle holds his Hogwarts letter, eyes glued to the parchment in hand. Kyle reads the Hogwarts acceptance letter signed by Deputy Headmistress McGonagall. Kyle recalls his transmigration and confirms his magical birthright with known wizarding families. Kyle's father Chris reminds him about their meeting with the Weasleys for Diagon Alley. Kyle tucks away the letter and calls for his magical companion Groot before leaving. Groot, the green bowtruckle, leaps out and waves goodbye to Kyle happily. Chris prefers few magical creatures, believing they belong in the wild unless true pets. Kyle remembers Newt Scamander's magical creature affinity and the chaos it brings. Chris jokes with Kyle about the letter, reminding him Hogwarts won't run away. Diana returns home early and holds Kyle's hand as they prepare to depart. Diana disapparates with Kyle, and Chris follows soon after to join them. Kyle prepares mentally for his new life and the adventures awaiting him at Hogwarts. The moment is a beginning as Kyle sets out to embrace destiny and magic alike. Kyle contemplates the weight of his parents' secrets about the magical world. Chris works late at the Ministry, his passion evident despite long hours. Diana's mysterious role at the Department of Mysteries remains hidden from Kyle. Groot and Kyle share a quiet moment before setting off on their journey. Kyle sets out from home, ready to meet the Weasleys and explore Diagon Alley. Diana leads Kyle through the Leaky Cauldron's door, bar silencing quickly. Chris enters quietly, but the room stays calm, voices kept low. Tom, the bar owner, greets Diana and Kyle warmly with a surprised smile. Diana kindly declines a drink and points Kyle towards the Weasleys. Tom warns Kyle about causing trouble with Diagon Alley's entrance bins. Kyle promises not to disturb the entrance bins again with an awkward grin. Mrs. Molly Weasley greets Kyle warmly with a tight hug inside the pub. Mr. Weasley starts a friendly conversation with Chris near the bar area. Fred and George wrap their arms over Kyle's shoulders with mischievous grins. Kyle greets Percy, Ron, and Ginny with a warm nod and a quiet smile. Mr. Weasley leads the group to the courtyard entrance of Diagon Alley. Fred and George prepare their greasy hair powder, aiming to prank Kyle. Chris spots Hagrid and calls out sharply, sensing trouble immediately. Hagrid nervously explains his simple errand, showing a small packet of seeds. Chris questions Hagrid's motives sharply but relaxes upon hearing Dumbledore's name. Kyle watches Hagrid leave, pondering the mystery behind his frequent secrets. Kyle recalls Hagrid's past purchases and the shadowy dealings in the cauldron. Kyle muses that Hagrid's dealings are cleverer than most realize. Kyle senses Chris remains unaware of Hagrid's full secrets but stays silent. Kyle keeps the three-headed dog news private, planning to trick the twins. Fred and George throw confetti, accidentally hitting each other's heads instead. Mrs. Weasley drags the twins away by their ears, clearly embarrassed. Mrs. Weasley mutters about family reputation while Mr. Weasley looks relieved. Kyle laughs beside Ron but freezes when Diana catches his gaze. Diana senses Kyle's guilt but says nothing, giving a warning look. Fred and George's notorious antics embarrass Mrs. Weasley deeply. Mrs. Weasley worries about her son's reputation but expects change soon. Kyle reflects on the twins' past deeds and the family's high expectations. Ron is too young for Hogwarts. Fred, George, and Percy need schoolbooks. Kyle doesn't need directions, knowing Diagon Alley like his own palm. Kyle arrives at the small, run-down Ollivander's wand shop feeling speechless. The wand shop is neglected and dusty, unlike other pristine shops nearby. Kyle wonders why Ollivander's is allowed to look so old and shabby around here. He decides not to ask. Offending Ollivander might harm their relations. Kyle considers asking Fred and George for info about the shop's condition. He jokes to himself that he's cheating Ron by using insider info. Kyle enters Ollivander's, ready to buy his first wand with focus. Kyle's parents leave, trusting the wand choice will take some time. An elderly man with sharp eyes appears behind the counter, greeting Kyle. Ollivander asks if Kyle is alone, his eyes reflecting subtle disappointment. Kyle confirms he is alone, though Ollivander's disappointment lingers. Ollivander asks Kyle's name and mutters about unfamiliar family names. Kyle remains focused on buying, ignoring Ollivander's muttered doubts. Ollivander surprises Kyle, choosing a wand without testing several. Kyle hesitates, then grabs the wand, sensing its power instantly. Ollivander explains the wand's wood and core, showing deep excitement. Ollivander shares history of cedar wands and their special traits. Kyle asks why phoenix feather and cedar wood are an unusual pair. Ollivander explains wands choose owners, materials gain harmony there. Ollivander says many wands wait for owners, their time hasn't come yet. Ollivander reveals Kyle's wand is unique, cedar with phoenix feather. Kyle absorbs the moment, feeling a strong bond with his new wand. Ollivander names confirms the price and Kyle pays with prepared gold coins. Ollivander bows slightly in thanks, watching Kyle depart with wand. A new young wizard enters with an adult. Ollivander greets them promptly. Chris recognizes Kyle's cedarwood wand and recalls its special history. Chris warns Kyle that this wand may keep him from Gryffindor House. Kyle reacts silently, already understanding what his father means. Diana approaches with supplies, curious about the joke between father and son. Kyle explains the wand's effect, and his parents laugh at the Gryffindor comment. Kyle tries on school robes, waiting for his custom ones to be made. Kyle opts for owl delivery since custom robes won't be ready until evening. Kyle quickly buys all his required textbooks from Flourish and Blots. He buys an updated Fantastic Beasts and a book of common spells for fun. Kyle resists buying more books, planning to use Hogwarts library instead. Kyle skips buying a pet, relying on family's many owls for letters. Kyle wants a broomstick, but Diana forbids buying one before Hogwarts. Chris lifts Kyle's spirits by letting him admire brooms in the shop window. Weasleys leave early. Mrs. Weasley must prepare dinner for her large family. Kyle regrets missing both his broomstick and the twins' antics that day. Despite setbacks, Kyle feels ready for Hogwarts and looks forward to the year. Kyle practices magic eagerly, experimenting with spells in his room each day. Chris and Diana treat their wands as precious, allowing Kyle rare use on special days only. Diana's wand shows no response to Kyle's touch. It feels lifeless in his hands. Kyle previously focused on non-magical subjects due to limited wand practice opportunities. Chris embraces teaching Kyle magic, enjoying their lively sessions in Kyle's room. Chris calmly corrects Kyle as a teacup magically lifts and floats upstairs uncontrolled. Chris advises Kyle to focus and start with safe objects to control magic better. Chris sighs after a loaf of bread crashes into the ceiling at high speed. Chris wonders about the chaos Kyle might cause without Diana's careful restrictions. Chris feels relief as the chaotic days wind down before Hogwarts begins tomorrow. Chris accepts Mrs. Weasley's dinner offer, carrying ingredients despite her scolding. Kyle happily blends in with Weasley children while playing their garden gnome game. Chris reluctantly stopped objecting after his scurvy grass crop was destroyed by gnomes. Kyle's gifted bat, signed by top players, helped him dominate gnome batting contests. Ron complains about Kyle's better bat, but Kyle insists belief beats equipment every time. Kyle teases Ron about Ginny's superior position despite her smaller stick. Ron nervously eats the candy, surprised and happy to taste raspberry flavor. They stop playing as Mrs. Weasley calls for dinner at the Burrow. Ginny asks Kyle to help her avoid the dreaded dragon dung flavor bean. Kyle refuses, telling Ginny the beans are meant for surprises and risks. Fred and George rush past, shoving Ron, who nearly falls into a gnome hole. Ron silently fumes but knows confronting the twins will only cause trouble. Mrs. Weasley sets the cozy outdoor dinner table while Kyle helps nearby. Fred and George flank Kyle at the table, wearing suspicious grins. Kyle senses the twins' plot but acts normal and focuses on the food. Kyle wonders about Hogwarts meals, hoping for something delicious and new. Fred cracks a joke about a greasy-haired Slytherin, then turns to George. Fred suggests giving Kyle advice about Hogwarts' dangerous sorting test. George disagrees, saying Kyle is capable and would handle an adult troll alone. Fred claims Kyle is proud and wouldn't want to rely on them for help. Mrs. Weasley reassures Kyle that the sorting test isn't truly scary or dangerous. Mr. Weasley pretends to be outraged but believes Kyle can tame a hippogriff. Chris jokes about a dragon, claiming this year it's a Hungarian horntail for Kyle. The adults and twins continue exchanging ridiculous tales to scare Kyle playfully. Kyle plays along with the prank, treating it as an amusing tradition. Two small garden gnomes tremble unseen in a corner, caught in the prank's chaos. Ron listens intently but his face grows pale as fears overwhelm him. Ginny looks pale and upset while Kyle shows gentle concern nearby. Kyle asks Ginny if she feels unwell, head turned gently to her left. Kyle silently takes Ginny's grilled fish, eyes focused downward at the food. Kyle eats the grilled fish happily while Ginny looks away in silent sadness. Fred and George sigh dramatically, disappointed their fish was taken by Kyle. Fred teases Ron about being scared of the dragon, head turned right toward Ron. George jokes about spiders in the Forbidden Forest, looking left at Fred. Ron screams in terror and runs off, head facing forward in panic. Fred and George laugh loudly as Ron flees, clearly pleased with their prank. Mrs. Weasley sharply scolds Fred and George with an intense gaze, head turned left. Fred tries to explain himself, head turned right toward Mrs. Weasley speaking softly. Kyle watches the scolding scene quietly, head turned right observing with interest. Kyle recalls the dangerous Acromantula colony. Twins wouldn't venture that far. Dinner winds down with lively atmosphere. Kyle enjoys the evening thoroughly. Percy heads upstairs to study, diligent as always, head turned slightly left walking. Ron attempts to run away carrying a bundle, head turned right hurriedly looking back. Mrs. Weasley chases Ron playfully, head turned left focused on him determined. Mr. Weasley chats with Chris about Kyle's magical creature talents calmly. Chris explains Kyle's unique bond with magical creatures to an impressed Mr. Weasley. Mr. Weasley muses humorously about conversing with objects, amusing Chris. September 1st signals Hogwarts start, thrilling young students alike. Chris plans to disapparate but Mrs. Weasley insists Kyle travels with them. Mrs. Weasley checks if Kyle has packed everything before departure. Mr. Weasley arrives in a vintage Ford, ready to drive everyone to King's Cross. The enchanted Ford carries all 9 passengers and their luggage comfortably. They arrive at King's Cross station near platform 9 and 10 around 10 o'clock. A protective muggle, repelling charm guards the group near the barrier to platform 9 3/4. The group passes through the barrier one by one to platform 9 3/4, bustling with students. Diana appears, smiling warmly, surprising Kyle with her unexpected presence. Diana reassures Kyle, reminding him not to forget their Hogwarts rules and warnings. Kyle promises to follow rules and keep letters from Hogwarts away from home. Diana kisses Kyle's cheek and watches him board the Hogwarts Express train. Chris talks with Amos Diggory before walking over to join Diana waiting beside the platform. Amos brags about his son Cedric's achievements, to the annoyance of others. Chris admits Cedric is talented but shifts conversation back to Diana's task progress. Diana denies finishing her mission so quickly, teasing about lax colleagues. Diana mentions taking time off without colleagues causing fuss, showing confidence. The group gathers on platform 9 3/4, preparing for Hogwarts year to begin. Kyle struggles to find a seat. Most train carriages are already full. He finds a less crowded compartment near the back of the train to rest. Inside, Kyle meets a boy around his age, Cedric Diggory, a well-known student. Kyle politely asks if he can sit. Cedric lets him in without hesitation. Kyle introduces himself. Cedric distractedly returns the greeting. Cedric is famous as a top student and future champion, surprising Kyle. Kyle recalls their families live nearby but never met until now on the train. Kyle quietly reads his new spellbook while Cedric stares distractedly ahead. Cedric pulls out a defense against the dark arts book after a moment of thought. Quiet reading fills the compartment until the door suddenly slides open again. Fred and George enter, accusing Kyle of standing them up and making them wait. Kyle offers a calm apology only if they swear on their dung bombs it's true. The twins joke Kyle was new to the train and lost. Their anger fades quickly. Fred and George spot Cedric and tease him playfully about his reputation. Cedric offers his homework to stop teasing, hoping for peace. George scoops up the homework, assuring Cedric they meant no harm. Fred and George leave smiling, while Cedric expresses quiet thanks to Kyle. Cedric apologizes for the trouble. Kyle reassures him it wasn't his fault. Cedric feels comforted and formulates a plan to handle teasing at Hogwarts. He believes offering his homework could ease the social tension quickly. Cedric feels relieved and starts a friendly chat with Kyle, asking his name. Kyle reveals his father's job, connects them both through magical creatures' work. Cedric connects the dots and excitedly says they must be neighbors. Boys grow comfortable fast, talking like old friends reunited. Cedric recalls trying to visit Kyle, asks if Kyle really studied with Newt Scamander. Kyle corrects Cedric, revealing his father learned from Newt, not him. Kyle reflects on Newt's social anxiety and recalls his unique learning experience. Kyle recalls Tina's kindness and how she cared for him during his visits. Kyle smiles, remembering his youthful curiosity keeping Newt engaged longer. Kyle steers conversation away from Newt's social quirks, changing the topic. Kyle asks about Hogwarts professors and worries about breaking rules. Cedric reassures Kyle professors are mostly kind unless rules are really broken. Cedric watches Kyle dismiss Weasley teasing with a smile and quick retort. Cedric apologizes for misunderstanding, and Kyle reassures him it's okay. Cedric shares details about Hogwarts professors, amusing and strict ones alike. Kyle feels reassured that Hogwarts, while tough, is welcoming enough to survive. Kyle feels uneasy on the slow, nostalgic Hogwarts Express journey. Cedric's lively chat makes Kyle's long train ride more enjoyable. Kyle trades snacks with Cedric to pass the time warmly and jovially. Cedric jokes about impossible sorting tests, showing his playful side. bed. Cedric asks about Kyle's preferred house, predicting his fit with Ravenclaw. Kyle admits no strong house preference, unsure about catching the snitch. Percy quietly enters the compartment, interrupting Kyle and Cedric's chat. Percy introduces himself politely to Cedric, breaking the informal tone. Kyle asks Percy what he needs after their brief, polite exchange. Percy asks if Kyle still has his rat tonic to help Scabbers recover. Kyle quickly finds the rat tonic bottle and hands it to Percy. Percy offers payment, blushing and embarrassed about his limited coins. Kyle declines most payment, reassuring Percy the tonic is not costly. Percy praises the tonic's quality and rarity with respectful bitterness. Kyle hides Scabbers' true story, avoiding Dumbledore's attention. Percy cares deeply for Scabbers, providing a special den and care. Percy leaves, promising to repay Kyle and offer help anytime. Cedric breaks the silence, curious if Kyle still gets potions from Scamander. Kyle admits he crafts his own tonics, including the rat tonic given Percy. Cedric asks Kyle if he can craft owl tonics, showing keen interest. Kyle explains owl tonic costs 9 sickles, matching market prices, no discount. Cedric requests a discount, considering their friendship and his tight pocket money. Kyle offers a serious discount, pricing the tonic at 1 galleon despite market norms. Cedric criticizes Kyle's odd discount, but reluctantly agrees to pay 1 galleon. Cedric jokingly warns Kyle about ending up in Azkaban one day for his schemes. Kyle challenges the warning with humor, then checks if Cedric still wants the tonic. Cedric agrees quietly, about to pay when a young girl enters the train compartment. Kyle and Cedric exchange curious looks as the girl hesitates and looks at Kyle. Kyle doubts if the girl boarded the right train, questioning why she approached him. The girl admits she overheard their talk by accident but wants to ask Kyle something. He pulls out a gray rat, looking hopeful as Kyle examines the pet closely away. Kyle suspects déjà vu, recalling Percy's rat but confirms this one is ordinary. Kyle assures the girl he can help and reaches for his bag to get the tonic. Kyle introduces himself to the girl as she shyly reveals her name is Kanna Prince. Kyle studies Kanna's rare choice of a plain field mouse carefully. Kanna quietly lingers, conflicted over the tonic Kyle just handed her. Kyle asks if the tonic amount is insufficient, raising an eyebrow. Kanna confesses she wanted the special red tonic instead of this one. Cedric notices the difference between Kanna's tonic and the red one Kyle gave Percy. Kanna nervously reveals her vast sum of gold to pay for the tonic. Cedric's envy and disbelief grow hearing Kanna casually mention Gringotts. Kyle struggles mentally to hide the truth about the tonic's red variant. Kyle explains the red tonic needs a stronger mouse first to handle its power. Kyle hopes to buy time, avoiding Kanna seeking Newt or Dumbledore directly. Kyle plans to visit Newt during the holidays to secure a better tonic formula. Kyle mentions Newt's tonic for Murtlaps could extend mouse lives with dilution. Kanna promises to feed Pocky as scheduled, trust clear in her eyes. Kyle hands Kanna a chocolate frog, encouraging her to feel better. Kanna blushes, accepting the chocolate frog but tucking it away carefully. Kyle smiles, hopeful they will become classmates and friends soon. Kanna whispers a soft thank you, her cheeks still tinged with pink. Kyle and Kanna share a quiet, hopeful moment ready for the trials ahead. Kyle returns Kanna's galleons by magic, respecting fairness among friends. Cedric asks Kyle for a trial of his tonic, sparking a playful exchange. Their talk drifts to Hogwarts and Quidditch, revealing their fan loyalties. A tense 10-minute Quidditch rivalry standoff chills the train car air. Announcement interrupts their standoff as the train nears Hogwarts. The train stops at a run, down platform as rain stops and cold settles in. Kyle cleans mud off his shoes with a quick magic charm on the grimy platform. Kyle notices Kanna shivering and catches her before she falls in the crowd. Kyle uses a charm to clean mud off Kanna's robes while she looks down nervously. Kyle reassures Kanna it's safe as she nods silently, still overcome with nerves. A dim oil lamp illuminates as Hagrid calls first, years to gather near the platform. Hagrid introduces himself and warns first, years about the boat trip ahead. First, years awkwardly follow Hagrid along the narrow path toward Hogwarts. Hagrid announces arrival at Hogwarts with enthusiasm from a bend in the path. The group gasps at Hogwarts' breathtaking view over the Black Lake at night. Hagrid calls first, years to board small boats for their Hogwarts lake crossing trip. Kyle and Kanna board a boat with 2 excited students, heading across the lake. Hagrid ensures all first, years are aboard and starts the magical lake crossing journey. The boats float past cliffs and ivy, entering Hogwarts' dark tunnel beneath Castle. Kyle studies the boats crossing the lake and wonders how they stay afloat. Boat exits a tunnel and docks at a shadowy underground pier. Students follow Hagrid up a damp path to imposing Hogwarts gates. Hagrid announces the first year's arrival to stern Professor McGonagall. McGonagall takes charge, leading first years inside the castle. Warmth of torchlight melts the cold as they enter Hogwarts. She explains the upcoming feast and the importance of house division. She names the 4 houses: Brave Gryffindor, Hardy Hufflepuff, Brainy Ravenclaw, and Pure Blood Slytherin. First years buzz after McGonagall leaves, whispering about the sorting ceremony. Anna asks nervously if the headmaster really chooses houses and if she'll be expelled. Kyle teases Kana that the sorting uses deadly magic, but she won't be harmed. A ghost floats by, and Kyle greets it as they wait for the sorting. Kana stands frozen, stunned by the ghost's eerie presence nearby. Students ready themselves nervously in the chamber before the sorting. Professor McGonagall returns to begin the sorting ceremony for all. Kyle and Kana exchange nervous looks as the ceremony is about to start. Multiple ghosts gather, surprising the students with their friendly greetings. One ghost performs a show, removing his head and dangling it in the air. The ghost tosses his head into a somersault and spins in midair with grace. He catches his head perfectly, finishing the acrobatic routine flawlessly. The students applaud wildly, impressed by the ghost's unique acrobatic display. Ghost boasts about joining the headless hunt with his trick, enjoying the praise. Students laugh and cheer, urging more tricks from the playful ghost performer. Nearly headless Nick sneers, interrupting the performance with cold disapproval. The headless ghost hopes Nick will join their hunting group this year. Nick leaves silently through the wall, breaking the mood with sudden tension. The headless ghost announces the sorting ceremony will begin soon. Kana looks pale and tense, isolated in a corner, avoiding the others. Professor McGonagall arrives, scolding students for their noisy laughter. Room grows silent as all lower their heads to respect the seriousness of the house system. Students quietly form a line, with Kana moving stiffly among them like a ghost. The group enters the grand banquet hall illuminated by thousands of floating candles. Dumbledore gazes warmly, flanked by heads of houses as McGonagall oversees the ceremony. McGonagall places the dusty sorting hat on a stool, ready for the ceremony to begin. Kyle fears the sorting hat's magic, imagining what would happen if it chose wrongly. The entire auditorium falls silent as anticipation fills the air. Sorting hat wriggles awkwardly, its tip swaying like a flounder. The sorting hat stops and softly hums before beginning its song. The sorting hat sings its song, explaining the Hogwarts houses aloud. Applause erupts when the sorting hat finishes its song with a deep bow. Professor McGonagall calls the first student to be sorted by name. Thomas Albright confidently wears the hat and is sorted into Ravenclaw. The sorting hat calls out Ravenclaw, and Thomas beams with pride. Marietta Edgecombe eagerly places the sorting hat and is sorted Ravenclaw. Hat calls Ravenclaw again as the house erupts in joyful cheers. Katie Bell clumsily wears the hat, causing laughter throughout the hall. Professor McGonagall kindly adjusts the hat after Katie struggles briefly. Hat calls Gryffindor, and roaring cheers flood the hall. Cho Chang sits calmly and is sorted into Ravenclaw with ease. The sorting hat calls Ravenclaw again, raising the house spirits high. McGonagall sternly quiets Ravenclaw students tossing plates in excitement. Amadev Rowell steps forward and is sorted into the cunning Slytherin. Kyle senses Kanna's angry glare burning into his back in the crowd. Kyle tries to ignore Kanna's fury and edges away in the thinning crowd. Professor McGonagall calls Kyle's name, freeing him from Kanna's glare. Kyle races quickly onto the stage, escaping Kanna's burning glare nearby. McGonagall's stern guard softens when Kyle politely thanks her. The sorting hat whispers to Kyle, doubting his polite facade. Kyle claims to be well behaved despite the sorting hat's doubts. The sorting hat reminisces about ancient times while guessing Kyle's house. The sorting hat considers Gryffindor but hesitates for reasons unknown. Slytherin is considered, but the hat worries about Snape's reaction. Hat jokes nervously about Azkaban and Nurmengard, causing Kyle to worry. Kyle tries to lighten mood by praising the hat's school song composition. The hat happily reminisces about its song, grumbling about Dumbledore. Kyle casually explains the rap style, impressing the curious sorting hat. Sorting hat considers Kyle's offer while reminding him to focus on sorting. The hat resumes thinking, acknowledging Kyle's politeness but unsure where to sort him. The sorting hat deliberates between houses, then choices Hufflepuff aloud. Cedric enthusiastically congratulates Kyle, warmly welcoming him to Hufflepuff. Kyle laughs and thanks Cedric, feeling proud of his sorting result. Hufflepuff prefects approach and warmly shake Kyle's hand in welcome. Kyle takes the seat offered next to Cedric, feeling right at home. Kyle watches the hall, content with his house and eager for Hogwarts life. Kyle feels relief as he settles at the Hufflepuff table after sorting. Students glance at Kyle, witches envy his placement in Hufflepuff. Fred and George sulk about Kyle's sorting, upset their prank won't work. They grumble the sorting hat must be senile for placing Kyle in Hufflepuff. Student yelps and bolts away as the biting ball clamps onto his robes. They realize their expensive biting ball is lost in the prank mishap. Kyle smirks, knowing the biting ball had been meant for him. Professor McGonagall removes the biting ball and deducts Gryffindor points. He glares sharply at Fred and George but says only 20 points off. The new traumatized student is escorted back to the table by Percy. Fred admits Kyle is too arrogant. George vows they still have a chance. The twins suppress their urge for revenge, staring away from Kyle's smug glare. Kyle remains unfazed by the twins' hostility, confident in his past victories. He silently jokes about how easily he can beat the twins without Charlie Weasley's help. Kyle chuckles softly, imagining Ron helping the twins only makes his victory easier. Sorting hat speeds up, sorting the last two new students swiftly. Cedric recognizes Kanna Prince and wonders if she'll be sorted into Slytherin. Kyle suspects Kanna's pure blood and predicts Slytherin for her by her attire. Kyle notices Snape's sudden intense gaze at the sorting hat with unease. Kyle senses trouble. Snape might know Kanna's family, sparking his concern. Sorting slows for Kanna. The hall waits tensely for her house to be announced. Sorting hat calls out Hufflepuff for Kanna, surprising the whole hall. Kyle wonders if the sorting hat's decision was influenced by something deeper. Kyle recalls his father's stories about past pureblood outrage at sorting. Snape storms silently as Dumbledore discusses Kanna's unexpected sorting. Kyle lowers his head, worried, as Snape's fury chills the atmosphere. Dumbledore welcomes students warmly, inviting them to enjoy the feast. Kyle bites into fried chicken, savoring the crisp skin and juicy meat happily. He enjoys simple baked potatoes, adding pepper and ketchup for extra flavor. Cedric points out Kanna staring at Kyle repeatedly across the hall. Kanna looks repeatedly at Kyle, her expression guarded but curious. Kyle feels unsettled by Kanna's gaze, wondering about the consequences. Kyle notices Kanna staring at him while cutting her steak quietly. Cedric questions Kyle about Kanna's cold gaze and their shared past. Kyle recounts the prank story involving Avada Kedavra during sorting. Cedric reacts stunned, struggling to believe such a prank could happen. Kyle confirms Kanna believes the prank, intensifying Cedric's disbelief. Cedric jokes Kyle and Kanna are perfect for each other, teasing slyly. Kyle retorts sharply, warning Cedric to avoid trouble with Snape. Cedric expresses surprise, asking if Kanna knows Snape well. Cedric scolds Kyle for the prank, suggesting punishment if he were a prefect. Kyle is stunned by Cedric's sudden judgment and disapproval. Kyle silently resents Cedric's betrayal with a hidden, frustrated gesture. Kyle and Kanna lock eyes in tense silence, challenge unspoken yet clear. Both fight to hold their gaze, neither willing to look away first. Kanna's resolve falters. She blushes deeply and averts her gaze quickly. Her anger fades quickly. She returns to her shy, awkward self quietly. Kyle realizes Kanna vents quietly through their silent eye contact. Kyle thinks Kanna's gentle nature might be a weakness in the dark wizard world. He reflects on dangers facing shy pure blood wizards outside Hogwarts walls. Kyle gives up worrying and returns to eating while Kanna avoids his gaze. Kyle chooses the maple pudding for dessert, eager to taste Hogwarts' best. He savors the pudding's perfect balance of sweetness and gentle acidity. The great hall quiets as Dumbledore rises to deliver his traditional end of banquet speech. Dumbledore warns first, years to avoid the forest and forbids magic in public areas. Fred and George theatrically bow after the magic ban is announced, unbothered. McGonagall looks sternly at the twins, barely hiding her anger and disapproval. Dumbledore announces Quidditch tryouts for second, years and above during the second week. Kyle plans to ask Professor Sprout to allow him to try out with the second years. Dumbledore introduces new defense against the dark arts professor, Orin, to the hall. Orin accidentally jabs Snape's back with his elbow, causing a sharp hiss from him. Snape rebukes Orin coldly and moves his chair away with visible disgust. Dumbledore moves on to discuss the rules about visiting Hogsmeade Village. Students burst into varied melodies as the school song begins. Kyle joins in quietly. Fred and George perform an energetic dance to Flight of the Bumblebee, leading others. Dumbledore smiles warmly, briefly moving with the beat before the song ends. He declares the banquet over and orders all students to return to their dormitories. The hall empties quickly as students rush for the doors, excitement buzzing in the air. Prefects heard the first, year students, urging them to stay together and move quickly. The Hufflepuff common room entrance hides in barrels along the kitchen corridor. Prefect Harris warns first years that wrong taps cause vinegar to spray from barrels. Harris advises practice to avoid the vinegar prank on the way into the common room. New students walk through the rotating barrel into Hufflepuff's warm and cozy common room. Kyle notices rare, valuable plants decorating the warm and inviting common room. He recognizes the wind chime sunflower as a highly valuable magical plant. Kyle glances at the honey-colored mantle carved with Hufflepuff badgers nearby. Above the mantle hangs Helga Hufflepuff's portrait, smiling kindly at students. Cedric greets Kyle and offers friendly snacks as more students join the room. Kyle brushes off Cedric's teasing about their friendship being all for show. Kyle wonders about Cedric's behavior, recalling the Weasley twins' similar styles. Prefect Harris invites first years to sit and learn Hogwarts rules while snacks arrive. Kyle quietly apologizes to Kanna for his earlier outburst, showing sincere remorse. Kanna admits fault graciously and forgives Kyle with a light playful slap on the arm. Kyle offers candy as compensation, their friendly exchange continuing quietly. Kyle refuses a licorice candy with a grimace, joking about its awful taste. Crunch sound as Kanna bites the candy, sharing a light moment with Kyle. Harris finishes the house rules while Kyle sits silently and withdrawn. Kyle insists he's just sleepy and refuses to drink anything before bed. Cedric circles closer trying to see Kyle's face, but Kyle turns away from him. Kyle tries to hide his black eye, claiming he hit the table by accident. Cedric doubts Kyle's story, wondering how the bruise could be that round. Kyle defends the kindness of Hufflepuff, denying any violence could happen here. Harris wraps up, inviting everyone to ask for help and welcomes them warmly. Harris leads the first years to their dormitories as Kyle stands abruptly and leaves. Under Harris's guidance, Kyle arrives at a warm yellow, themed dormitory room. Kyle meets his two new roommates, Mikkel and Ryan, as they greet him warmly. Mikkel shares his astonishment at becoming a wizard, recalling his family's surprise. Ryan explains his half-blood heritage, his mother's shock at magic's reality. Mikkel recalls the apparition lesson that surprised his parents when the professor visited. Kyle quietly corrects the term locomotor to apparition during the story. Mikkel recognizes Kyle as the boy whose sorting hat took an unusually long time. Kyle explains the sorting hat was torn about where to place him, causing delay. Mikkel admires Kyle, feeling the sorting delay meant great talent and potential. Mikkel speaks quickly about Diagon Alley, Gringotts, and Wand choosing with excitement. Kyle and Ryan struggle to keep up with talkative Mikkel before fatigue sets in. Exhausted, Kyle and Ryan each fall asleep quickly in the warm dormitory beds. Kyle wakes to sunlight streaming clearly through the dormitory window. Kyle opens the window wide to let in crisp morning air and wake his roommates. He notices his two roommates still asleep and thinks kindly of them. After washing up, Kyle leaves the dorm to head toward the common room. To his surprise, the famous moving stairs stay still during his walk. Kyle sits alone at the largely empty Hufflepuff breakfast table. Mikkel and Ryan arrive at breakfast and join Kyle at the table. Kyle explains why the window was open and woke him at dawn. Mikkel grudgingly thanks Kyle for opening the window and waking them. Kyle finishes breakfast and announces plans to explore before classes. Kyle leaves the Great Hall and walks through the castle toward the gates. Near the castle gates, Kyle summons a flock of owls from the sky. He offers food and care to any owl that wants to become his messenger. Chaos erupts as owls scramble and fight to become his chosen companion. The largest brown owl, Rattan, wins and proudly settles on Kyle's shoulder. Kyle affectionately scratches Rattan, who responds by rubbing its beak. Kyle recalls how he named Rattan and how Hagrid once tried calling the owl. The story ends with Hagrid stunned when Kyle called Rattan by name. Kyle and Rattan prepare for adventures ahead, solidifying their bond. Kyle understands his owl represents his identity in the wizarding world. Diana explains the owl's registration grants faster mail processing at the ministry. Kyle feeds the owls with nuts and jerky, keeping them happy for their help. Kyle places Rattan on a shelf beside his bed before grabbing textbooks. Cedric approaches Kyle with a detailed map to help him navigate Hogwarts. Kyle thanks Cedric and asks about his first class before Cedric rushes rushes off. Kyle recalls Cedric's warning never to be late for potions class at Hogwarts. Kyle finds Charm's classroom easily thanks to the map and enters the room. Kyle notices Kanna and sees Mikkel and Ryan arrive at class just on time. Mikkel complains about getting lost endlessly on shifting stairs to class. Kyle tries to understand their confusing story about the shifting staircases. Kyle gives up trying to solve the mystery and asks how they arrived here. Mikkel reveals a Ravenclaw girl helped guide them down from the 5th floor. Kyle identifies the Ravenclaw girl as Cho Chang sitting quietly with classmates. Kyle mentally notes Hogwarts feels like a maze, warning to stay alert. Kyle prepares for class, grateful for friendship and guidance at Hogwarts. Kyle checks on Ratton later, ready for new lessons and adventures together. Kyle notices Cho Chang quietly helping during their first class at Hogwarts. Kel worries about future tardiness while Kyle comforts him calmly. Kyle shows Cedric's Hogwarts map to Mikkel and Ryan for guidance. Ryan instantly recognizes the map while Mikkel debates copying it later. Kyle uses the doubling charm to create a temporary copy of the map for Mikkel. Professor Flitwick praises Kyle's doubling charm and awards house points. Flitwick examines the duplicated map and confirms its charm will last a week. Flitwick explains why permanent doubling charms are impossible even for Dumbledore. Flitwick shifts focus to teaching the basic yet crucial lighting charm. Students attempt the lighting charm and the room glows with varied lights. Kyle's wand produces a calm white light alongside other Ravenclaw's successes. Hufflepuff follows closely with 6 students mastering the lighting charm. Flitwick reminds the class to stay calm and pronounce the incantation properly. Kyle watches Mikkel and Ryan struggle to produce steady light with their wands. Ryan manages steady light, improving from flickers to steady flashlight mode. Michael's light flickers wildly, brightest then dimmest, growing more erratic. Kyle senses danger as Mikkel raises his wand suddenly. Foreboding strikes. Blinding flash erupts, filling the room with a brief intense light burst. Students panic, blinded by the flash, stumbling and crying out in distress. Flitwick's back faces panicked students, shouting comfort toward empty space. The painted wizards watch Flitwick's actions with unimpressed expressions. Kyle and few others remain unaffected, helping students avoid panic and harm. Flitwick mutters about the chaos, rubbing eyes as he climbs off the desk. Flitwick, frustrated, recalls many magical mishaps but never lighting charm chaos. Flitwick approaches Mikkel, who lies still on a desk, silent and oddly peaceful. Flitwick declares Mikkel comatose from magical exhaustion, surprising everyone. Kyle offers to take Mikkel to Madame Pomfrey for care. Flitwick agrees quickly. Kyle levitates Mikkel and exits the classroom ready to find Madame Pomfrey's aid. Kyle spots Mrs. Norris the cat and asks for help to reach the hospital wing. Mrs. Norris curls tail, then walks toward stairs, silently guiding Kyle onward. Kyle promises dried fish as thanks, but Mrs. Norris rejects his touch sharply. Kyle follows Mrs. Norris up fixed stairs, carrying unconscious Mikkel carefully. They reach Pendulum Clock Courtyard. Mrs. Norris signals the stairs to the hospital. Madame Pomfrey tends her patients and grumbles about irresponsible professors. Madame Pomfrey spots Kyle with unconscious Mikkel and reacts with shock. She places Mikkel on a bed and demands to know how he was injured. Kyle explains Michael's accident during charms, mentioning the unfamiliar lighting charm. He questions Kyle in disbelief about the lighting charm's existence and danger. Kyle insists it's true, naming witnesses and Professor Flitwick as confirmation. Madame Pomfrey looks at Mikkel, bewildered by his extreme magical exhaustion. Kyle reflects on Michael's uncontrolled magic like flooring the gas pedal recklessly. Dumbledore and Snape arrive. Madame Pomfrey leads them to Michael's bedside. Dumbledore commends Kyle's bravery and rewards Hufflepuff 20 points. Kyle listens humbly, understanding Snape's warning about magic control. Dumbledore advises Kyle to leave and visit Mikkel later to let him rest. Kyle leaves the hospital wing, carrying hope and caution in his heart. Dumbledore meets Madame Pomfrey briefly, then leaves with Kyle through the castle. Kyle asks Dumbledore about magic problems, and Dumbledore patiently explains everything. Dumbledore parts ways with Kyle and heads toward the headmaster's office alone. Dumbledore meets Snape, who presents an expensive potion ingredients list to him. Dumbledore inspects the parchment, eyebrows rising as he reads the exorbitant ingredient list. Dumbledore questions Snape about unusual ingredients and large quantities listed. Snape explains the recipe is experimental and claims minor miscalculations require excess. Dumbledore sighs and signs the parchment, allowing Snape to proceed with brewing. Snape expresses appreciation for the approval, eager to prepare the rare potion ingredients. Dumbledore casually asks Snape's opinion of Kyle, causing a flicker of mockery in Snape. Dumbledore praises Kyle's qualities and recalls Diana, hinting at past Slytherin ties. Snape shouts fiercely, forbidding mention of Diana's name, anger flaring. Snape storms off, ignoring scolding portraits, leaving Dumbledore silently amused. Dumbledore sighs softly, reflecting on memories and his enjoyment of reminiscing. Phineas Nigellus Black snarls, accusing Dumbledore of provoking Snape with his plans. Phineas warns Dumbledore not to come closer, mistrusting his intentions with Snape. Dumbledore shakes his head with mild amusement, enjoying the unpredictable past. Kyle skips class and heads to the library to borrow recommended books. Madame Pants refuses Kyle's request to borrow 2 books at once. Kyle chooses one book, Gaddying with Ghouls, despite Madame Pants's displeasure. Madame Pants reveals the book is already checked out for 2 years. Kyle reluctantly abandons that book and asks for The Troubadour in the Wind. Madame Pants softens, retrieving the requested book for Kyle to borrow. Kyle observes Madame Pants's sharp, vulture-like appearance as she walks away. A nervous student sneezes nearby and is promptly expelled from the library. Madame Pants warns Kyle harshly about overdue or damaged books. Kyle promises to return the book on time and leaves the library quietly. Kyle returns to the Hufflepuff common room and is greeted by concerned classmates. Ryan asks anxiously about Michael's condition and recent hospital visit. Kyle reassures Ryan that Mikkel is improving and will be discharged soon. Ryan suggests preparing food for Mikkel to have when he leaves the hospital. Classmates enthusiastically volunteer their favorite treats for Michael's recovery. Kyle gently urges the group to focus on supporting Michael's studies instead of snacks. Kyle explains Michael's accident was due to impatience while falling behind in class. Kyle proposes students take notes in class today to help Mikkel catch up on schoolwork. Classmates slowly warm to Kyle's idea, realizing Mikkel studies very hard. Volunteers step forward to take notes for Mikkel in upcoming classes. Others brainstorm to gather Michael's homework and inform professors of his dedication. Cedric watches first, ears mesmerized by Kyle's strange words with disbelief. Cedric doubts Kyle's claims but admits their attention improves in class. Anna quietly resolves to avoid Kyle despite his influence over others. Kyle quietly leaves the group, heading towards a sofa to read his book. Cedric approaches Kyle to call him for lunch, curious about his reading. Kyle explains Dumbledore recommended the biography he's reading to Cedric. Cedric eagerly accepts the offer to borrow the book once Kyle finishes reading it. They leave the common room to join the lunch at the Great Hall together. Fred and George confront Kyle, teasing him about the classroom explosion incident. Fred and George joke Kyle will be infamous for blowing up the classroom. Kyle denies causing any damage and insists the mishap was unrelated to him. The twins say the rumors originated from Ravenclaw first, years with misinformation. Frustrated, Kyle rebukes Fred and George for spreading half-truths without listening. Kyle warns the twins to get the full story or risk ruining his reputation. Kyle sighs, joking that Fred and George would suit a career at the Daily Prophet. Kyle avoids the conversation, eager to eat lunch away from the teasing twins. Kyle questions Fred's belief about Gryffindor students being unruly and disrespectful. The twins are sentenced to lose points and endure night confinement for 1 week. McGonagall orders the twins to transcribe Gryffindor's honors book without magic at night. With heavy hearts, the twins trudge back to Gryffindor table after McGonagall's verdict. Kyle smiles politely at McGonagall and invites her to join them for lunch. McGonagall gently declines Kyle's invitation, revealing she already ate. Kyle and Cedric both show mock disappointment at McGonagall's refusal politely. McGonagall surveys the orderly Hufflepuff table, tired, longing for better days. She wonders why calm, polite kids like Kyle and Cedric belong to other houses. She sighs quietly, reflecting on the chaotic sorting choices of the year. Hufflepuff table erupts in laughter once McGonagall departs the Great Hall. Kyle watches the Hufflepuff students laugh, baffled by their lively energy. Cho Chang greets Kyle politely, requesting to copy his detailed map. Cedric nods casually as Kyle and Cho discuss the map exchange request. Kyle gifts the map to Cho for free, appreciating her help to his roommates. Cho laughs softly, sharing how her roommates got lost using wrong staircases. Kyle points out his map mostly shows Hufflepuff routes, unsure of Ravenclaw's. Cho jokes about earlier spell failures, handing back the original map. Kyle notes Ravenclaw's competitive spirit, comparing them to Hufflepuff's. Kyle recalls Cedric as Hufflepuff's only notable standout this year. Kyle asks Cho if Ravenclaw students also have similar maps to his own. Cho admits she has never seen Ravenclaw maps but assumes they exist. Kyle explores potential market, deciding to sell maps to Ravenclaw first years. Cho says the map price must stay low to attract first-year buyers quickly. Kyle agrees to 10 sickles, planning to earn pocket money with ease. Cho urges Kyle to act fast. Map sales value decreases after the first week. Kyle proposes a partnership, sharing map creation, sales, and profits 50-50. Cho accepts the deal eagerly, ready to start selling maps to her housemates. Cho hurries back to Ravenclaw Tower, leaving Kyle and Cedric to wait. Kyle suggests trying to sell maps to first years despite uncertainty of success. Kyle explains the map's value and affordability to a skeptical Cedric quietly. Kyle assigns Cedric to copy maps, trusting his skill with doubling charms. Cedric agrees reluctantly, seeing fairness in Kyle's proposal for sharing profits. Kyle plans to meet Cho later and leaves Cedric to handle copying the maps. Kyle takes a nap, then heads to Transfiguration class with Ryan to avoid trouble. Kyle notices few students in Transfiguration class as he arrives early with Ryan. Kyle spots a tabby cat on the teacher's desk, ready with dried fish in pocket. Kyle waits patiently near the door, sending Ryan inside first to save a seat. Cho rushes to Kyle, excited about selling 12 maps within the first hour. Kyle praises Cho's efforts calmly, acknowledging her hard work with a smile. Cho reminds Kyle she needs the map promised after class, eager to keep her word. Kyle explains Cedric copies maps. Cho can find him in Great Hall after class. Cho considers splitting profits 3 ways, wanting a fair share of earnings. Kyle agrees to let Cho discuss profit sharing with Cedric after class calmly. Cho is determined to ask Cedric for a fair profit split, including her share. Kyle laughs softly, warning Cho he's amused by her suspicious question. Kyle distracts Cho with talk of class, steering her away from his mysterious smile. Kyle blends into the room, moving forward with a bag of dried fish hidden. Kyle sees a Ravenclaw witch ahead, pulling out a green cat toy from her pocket. Kyle panics as his plan is foiled by the witch with the cat toy ahead of him. Kyle takes a deep breath and sits down in the front row, acting as if planned all along. Professor McGonagall appears suddenly, blocking the witch's attempt to use the cat toy. McGonagall explains her animagus cat form to the startled witch gently and firmly. McGonagall firmly tells the witch to return to her seat as the lesson is about to start. Kyle's calm demeanor confirms he recognized McGonagall's animagus cat form from the start. McGonagall warns the class that transfiguration is complex and dangerous. Kyle's anxious heart eases as the classroom falls silent at McGonagall's warning. Kanna sits uneasily next to Kyle, confused why they ended up side by side. Kanna absent-mindedly writes nonsense notes while lost in thought about her seat. Professor McGonagall continues lecturing, unaware of the distracted students beneath her. He explains that transfiguration requires precise focus when waving a wand. McGonagall transforms the lectern into a lively pig that startles the class. The first years are amazed as Kyle and the others watch the lifelike pig at the lectern. The new students struggle to transform simple matches into needles in class. Despite efforts, no student manages more than failed transformations on their matches. Hufflepuff students corrupt matches into charcoal, losing house points instead. Ravenclaw students try cheating with colored matches and fake needles, caught and punished. Professor McGonagall notices Kyle's match partially transforming into a needle. Kyle's half needle appears in awkward spots, impressing McGonagall uniquely. Kanna Prince succeeds first, conjuring a perfect shiny silver needle in class. Kanna blushes deeply, overwhelmed by the attention and applause of the class. She rushes out of class clutching her books, regretting sitting so close to Kyle. Kyle is invited by Cho to join the auditorium but declines due to plans with Ryan. Ryan scolds Kyle for sitting in the front row, surprised by his boldness. Kyle explains he forgot to tell Cho about giving the map to Liana, apologizing. Ryan admires Kyle's courage but wonders if they should leave now or wait. Kyle decides to skip the hospital visit and head back to the dorm with Ryan. Back in class, McGonagall praises Hufflepuff's diligence after lesson's end. Professor notices Kyle's match fully turned into a needle, pleased with his progress. Kyle returns smiling to his common room and is startled by Cedric's arrival. Cedric proudly shows Kyle their earned money from selling Ravenclaw maps. Cedric explains the doubling charm on parchment, raising the map prices. Kyle notes Cedric's effort to improve maps and their rising value. Kyle casually asks Cedric about his impression of Cho Chang. Cedric praises Cho for her intelligence and good nature. Kyle frowns. Kyle closes his book and decides to go feed the cat despite past failures. Cedric asks about Kyle's plans, distracted by counting his money. Kyle makes lots of noise walking down the hallway, eager to feed Mrs. Norris. Kyle recalls his promise to feed Mrs. Norris despite past disappointment. Mrs. Norris Norris appears as expected, followed by Filch with a suspicious grin. Filch threatens Kyle, but Kyle calmly cites school rules without fear. Kyle explains he only made noise to find Mrs. Norris quickly in the large school. Filch distrusts Kyle's gift, warning him of the danger to Mrs. Norris. Kyle assures Filch the fish is premium and worth the trouble he took to find it. Filch hesitates, remembering the premium food's rarity and Kyle's sincerity. Filch warns Kyle to be careful, but lets him go this time with a grumble. Kyle tosses the dried fish to Mrs. Norris, who eagerly accepts it this time. Kyle attends History of Magic, where boredom overwhelms the young students. Kyle glances around, noting all Gryffindors have given in to sleep and exhaustion. Some Hufflepuffs struggle to stay awake, but soon give in to overwhelming boredom. Eventually, all students fold their parchments, surrendering to sleep under Bin's ghostly droning. Afternoon brings dreaded potions class ruled by Snape, known for his harsh, unfair discipline. Kyle is summoned to the hospital wing, where Mikkel complains loudly about his treatment. Madame Pomfrey and Snape stand silently as Mikkel insults both with wild accusations. Dumbledore reassures Kyle about Michael's treatment and the help he will receive next. Kyle promises Dumbledore he will keep Mikkel safe and prevent another magical accident. Dumbledore advises Kyle to keep Michael's magic in check with a special potion. Kyle remains silent, focusing on Snape's disapproving scowl in the corner of the room. Dumbledore leaves the hospital wing, trusting Madame Pomfrey to complete Michael's care. Kyle steps outside the infirmary door, awaiting Mikkel and trying to stay patient. Michael's desperate wail echoes from the infirmary as he resists another bitter potion. Kyle winces at his friend's pained cries, feeling helpless yet resolute for support. After Michael's cries end, silence falls as Kyle quietly closes the infirmary door. The corridor grows peaceful once more, giving Kyle brief relief from the strain. The hospital wing door opens. Mikkel stumbles out, visibly unwell. Mikkel asks Kyle to help him up, voice raw and weak from potion effects. Kyle smiles, saying he added points to Hufflepuff despite Michael's state. They walk slowly toward class. Michael's blue color fades in dim light. They arrive late as Snape eyes them with disdain from the classroom door. Snape scolds them, deducting points from Hufflepuff with cold contempt. Kyle apologizes quickly to avoid more trouble from Snape's cold gaze. Snape warns them again and orders them to their seats with more point loss. Snape lectures on potions' power, casting a dark shadow on the class. Snape singles out Mikkel with a sharp question about potions' ingredients. Mikkel answers but is rebuked harshly with another point deducted. Snape instructs them to open books and warns about the boil, cure potion dangers. Snape excludes Mikkel from potion work, removing his cauldron with a sneer. Snape orders Kyle to pair with Kana. Kana watches, shocked and alone. Kana contemplates switching seats but decides to stay with Kyle reluctantly. Snape snaps at the class to hurry as Kana begins grinding ingredients quietly. Kana notices the extra ingredients on her desk, hinting favoritism by Snape. Snape orders Kyle and Kana to work together, ignoring Michael's absence. Kyle watches Kana skillfully manage the potion without his much help. Kyle notes others rushing while he waits calmly, bored but focused. Snape scolds two Slytherin first years for failing their task repeatedly. Snape orders the students to pour out their insufficient potions and start anew. Kyle stays calm and observant, waiting for the potion to reach the right color. Kyle compliments Kana on her skill, surprised she had no prior experience. Kana looks around, noticing the chaos and smoke filling the potion classroom. Kana notices the Slytherin cauldron violently foaming and overflowing suddenly. Snape uses magic to clean up the exploding potion, avoiding injury. Snape angrily removes the careless Slytherin first years from the class. The room falls silent. Kyle prepares ingredients to look busy at his table. Kyle slowly cuts a porcupine quill, deliberately dragging out the task. Kana timidly admits she cut the quill after Snape's sharp criticism. Kyle and Kana share a quiet moment, their heads turned toward each other. Snape prowls the classroom, eyes sharp as students nervously work. Kyle and Kana carefully observe their potion, their heads angled down. Kyle and Kana share a small smile, their heads slightly turned toward each other. Lesson continues as Kyle and Kana work quietly, heads down focused. Snape harshly criticizes Kana but surprisingly awards her 5 points. The class freezes, stunned by Snape's rare favor toward Kana Prince. Slytherins grumble, questioning why a Hufflepuff earned points instead. Snape scolds Kyle harshly, deducting 5 points from Hufflepuff. Kyle is bewildered by Snape's double standard over quill cutting. Snape grudgingly awards 5 points to Hufflepuff for a perfect potion. News spreads fast. Kana becomes the talk of Hogwarts for her skill. Fred and George visit Kyle, looking worn from their latest detention. Kyle advises Fred and George to take care of their health amid detention stress. George complains about their exhausting detention copying a huge book. Fred jokes that McGonagall's task will keep them alive despite exhaustion. George remembers their real purpose for visiting Kyle, to meet Kanna. Kyle explains Kanna isn't eating in the Great Hall tonight to siblings. George forgets Kanna isn't in the hall due to their swirling thoughts. The twins lament missing Kanna's autograph due to their heavy detentions. Fred grimly notes their late night detention will drain their energy fully. Students gather outside for herbology on a lively morning at Hogwarts. Professor Sprout warns about magical plants and demands quiet in the greenhouse. Inside the greenhouse, students stay on the safe left side, avoiding dangerous plants. Nervous Gryffindor notices the fearsome chomping cabbages across the greenhouse. Professor Sprout assures students the chomping cabbages are safe if unprovoked. The herbology lesson begins with students turning to page 1 about dittany plants. Students answer Professor Sprout's questions about dittany leaves confidently. Professor Sprout happily awards points and hands out fresh dittany leaves to students. Kyle knows dittany leaves heal minor wounds quickly when properly applied. After class, Mikkel quickly confronts Kyle about something he saw earlier. Kyle explains he only picked up a bag of fertilizer dropped by the professor. Mikkel admits he wouldn't risk approaching the frightening chomping cabbages. Kyle asks Mikkel about learning magic control over the weekend mornings. Mikkel expresses frustration over weekend classes and the magic suppressing potion. Kyle tells Mikkel and Ryan to return to dormitory. He heads elsewhere alone. Kyle walks to the 8th floor and approaches the tapestry of trolls at Hogwarts. Kyle paces 3 times in front of the tapestry, asking for a greenhouse to appear. An archway materializes across from the tapestry. Kyle grasps its brass handle. Kyle enters the vast room of requirement filled with rich soil and bright sunlight. Kyle whispers for rain, and a gentle downpour waters the soil without wetting him. Kyle marvels at the room of requirement's power, ready to grow magical plants. Kyle enjoys magic, turning rain to blizzard, then creating huge hail. He switches the weather back to calm, remembering his real task ahead. Kyle pulls 2 tiny seeds from his pocket, treating them like precious glass. He recalls how the chomping cabbage spat out the seeds during herbology class. Kyle digs small holes and plants the seeds carefully in the fertile soil. He stands, satisfied that the seeds are secure to bring to Professor Sprout later. Kyle leaves the room and heads to class, joining other excited Hufflepuffs. They reach the defense against the dark arts room where desks are pushed aside. Professor Oren greets the class, asking them to put away their books. Explains class will focus on practical defense, not theoretical knowledge. He stresses the danger of dark magic and magical creatures that threaten lives. Oren reveals the lesson focus magical creatures, not dark magic spells today. He lifts the cover, revealing a small blue insect buzzing anxiously inside. The buzzing insect, called Billy Wig, causes dizziness and makes victims float. He awards Mikkel 5 points for naming the creature as a billywig correctly. Oren explains billywig's sting causes floaty dizziness lasting days if repeated. Lady Bell doubts the danger, but Oren warns her to wait and see. Oren says lessons will teach spells to handle creatures, no combat yet. The class is ready to learn practical defense against magical creatures today. Professor Oren explains the billywig charm requires full focus to succeed. Oren teaches the class to focus and teaches the simple charm Relatio. Kanna nervously steps forward to cast her first billywig charm attempt. Kanna casts Relatio with power, making the billywig collapse inside the cage. Professor Oren awards Kanna 1 point and prepares a second billywig cage. Santos nervously fails at first but succeeds after clear pronunciation practice. Students gain confidence but become careless, missing targets and breaking cages. The chaos escalates as the professor collapses, breaking a cage and releasing a billywig. The angry billywig attacks students while spells fly to contain it in the air. Oren yells "Stop!" and immobilizes the billywig with Petrificus totalis. Oren catches the immobilized billywig and replaces it safely into its cage. He checks on the student's safety and demands wands be put away except first place. The lesson continues smoothly after order is restored with everyone focusing hard. Oren leaves the classroom quickly after the lesson, clearly exhausted from stress. Oren relaxes in his office with tea, enjoying the moment of calm after chaos. Oren notices a missing billywig cage and panics, realizing the loss. He rushes back to the classroom, frantically searching for the escaped billywig. Oren sighs heavily, realizing a hefty fine awaits him for the lost creature. The defense class class chaos surprises no one, remembered as minor compared to past events. Previous dark arts professors had strange mishaps, making Oren's accident mild. One professor brewed a strange potion and collapsed, still hospitalized to this day. Kyle wakes late, groggy, until Cedric knocks, waking him and offering food. Cedric tells Kyle about Quidditch tryouts. Kyle refuses, citing first-year rules. Kyle warns Cedric about saving for better broomsticks beyond slow school models. Cedric proudly shows off Gryffindor and Slytherin maps, eager to find partners. They realize selling to Slytherin needs help, contemplate middlemen for success. Cedric suggests asking the Weasley twins for Slytherin contacts. Kyle agrees. They part ways near the Great Hall. Cedric heads to tryouts, Kyle to the library. In the library, Madame Pants inspects Kyle's returned book with stern eyes. Madame Pants reminds Kyle of rules. He reassures her with a quiet chuckle. Kyle borrows a new book about magical Asian plants, eyes scanning its pages. He finds info on the dangerous Chinese chomping cabbage and copies notes neatly. Kyle packs his things and decides to keep the book for future reference. He feels the extra book may aid him in upcoming herbology lessons confidently. The quiet weekend begins with new plans unfolding quietly at Hogwarts Castle. Cedric shines in Quidditch, catching the snitch fast to secure his spot. Cedric discusses strategy with Fred and George to handle Slytherin during tryouts. Cedric dashes off excitedly to join the Quidditch training, pumped for victory. Kyle shrugs, unimpressed by Quidditch hype, preferring a peaceful lunch alone. Kyle orders lemonade to refresh himself, enjoying his meal quietly at his own pace. Afternoon comes. Kyle leaves the castle holding a parchment of plant notes carefully copied. Kyle considers the complex challenge of growing chomping cabbage outside its native habitat. Kyle plans to accelerate seed growth, avoiding the usual long wait for maturity. Kyle approaches Hagrid's cabin, a weathered wooden house near the forbidden forest edge. Hagrid answers the door nervously, initially warning Kyle to stay back and away. Hagrid recognizes Kyle and softens, recalling their past encounter warmly. Kyle jokes about Owl naming mishaps, lightening the mood between them quickly. Kyle asks about mooncalves while Hagrid shows nervous concern for safe boundaries. Hagrid fetches a bucket of mooncalf droppings, but they're older and darker than needed. Hagrid ventures into the forest alone to find fresher droppings for Kyle's needs. Hagrid returns quickly with a small bag of fresh mooncalf droppings for Kyle's plants. Kyle thanks Hagrid, who jokes about avoiding renaming owls in future visits. Kyle plans to leave but teasingly warns Hagrid about the three-headed dog inside. Hagrid angrily denies owning a three-headed dog named Fluffy. Hagrid tries to hide the truth about Fluffy to avoid trouble with authorities. Hagrid fears Fluffy will be taken and he might end up in Azkaban prison. Hagrid forces a stern face to scare Kyle but nervously sweats through it. Kyle feigns belief and dismisses the three-headed dog story lightly. Kyle warns Hagrid about his dog's odd behavior linked to forest roaming. Kyle spots Kanna crouching low in bushes and approaches with curiosity. Kanna quietly explains she's searching for a lost galleon amid the bushes. Kyle knows magical coins cannot be summoned by Accio due to anti-theft magic. Kyle helps Kanna search carefully, but her lost coins remain unfound. After an hour, they find no coins. Kyle questions if she's sure it fell here. Kanna hesitates, saying the coin was here yesterday but vanished mysteriously. Kyle considers other places like the Quidditch pitch or greenhouse to search next. Kanna doubts recovery chances and prefers to wait until holidays to visit Gringotts. Kyle offers to lend Kanna money until her owl arrives, but she politely declines. Kanna thanks Kyle and promises to pay him back after Christmas holidays. They walk back toward the castle while Kyle asks about Kanna's missing rat pet. Kanna smiles faintly and says her pet rat, Pocky, plays with a dorm hamster. Kyle jokes about pairing their pets to create a litter of baby mice next year. Kyle acts immediately, telling Kanna to return while he seeks Percy in Gryffindor. Kyle finds Percy missing in Gryffindor. No one knows his whereabouts. Kyle returns to find Kanna nervous, clutching Pocky as Owl Rat-eyes the pet. The hungry owl eyes Pocky as a tasty snack but respects its owner's claim. Kanna grows pale and tense, clutching her shirt nervously as Kyle approaches. Kyle distracts Rattan with jerky, easing Kanna's tension as the owl shifts focus. Kyle explains Percy's absence. Kanna dismisses concern, focusing on her pet's comfort. Kanna returns her pet rat to the dorm while flashing Rattan a defiant grin. Kyle chuckles, curious why Kanna is mad at an owl and offers her 10 galleons. Kanna politely refuses Kyle's money, insisting she doesn't need it yet. Kyle Kyle warns Kanna about future expenses, but she remains stubborn on money offers. Kanna resists help but silently considers Kyle's offer as practical advice sinks in. Kyle praises Kanna's care for her rat, then asks about Slytherin first years. Kanna recalls meeting Raoul and Yaxley, uncertain if they would remember her. Kyle proposes a plan for Kanna to earn galleons herself, sparking her interest. Kanna considers earning money by selling maps, intrigued by a high-profit deal. Kyle explains the rarity and craftsmanship of the exclusive Slytherin maps. Kanna doubts the map's value after 3 days. Kyle assures they are still useful. Kyle points out Hogwarts stair patterns change daily, making maps essential to avoid getting lost. Kyle assures someone will buy the maps. He encourages Kanna to take this chance.